آغاز رزمایش موشکی اقتدار پایدار 1404 نیروی دریایی حیاتی و تعیین کننده ارتش جمهوری اسلامی ایران را اعلام می نمایم. یا محمد رسول الله، یا محمد رسول الله، یا محمد رسول الله.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's stream. This is a recorded stream with our dear friend Ehsan Safarnejad from Iran, and we're going to focus on Iran and whether there is an attempted soft coup inside Iran and whether or not Israel will wage or would wage a second phase of hostilities against Tehran. And I will start this conversation with our friend Ehsan by an article published by Javad Zarif in the Foreign Policy, and he's calling for a paradigm shift in Iran. And with paradigm shift, he means the geopolitical posture, apparently, of Iran, and also pursuing a diplomatic approach instead of confrontation with the United States and Israel. If I may just summarize the main premise of this article, Javad Zarif argues that West Asia or the Middle East is at a critical turning point. The cycle of perpetual conflict seen in Gaza, Israeli military actions, and regional destabilization can only be broken if Iran and its neighbors abandon a threat paradigm and instead embrace a possibilities paradigm. So we have to move what he calls quote-unquote threat paradigm and embrace what is called quote-unquote possibilities paradigm. And this possibilities paradigm is centered on diplomacy, regional cooperation, and people-driven resilience. The piece of the article frames Iran not as a spoiler, but as a potential driver of peace and integration, provided that external powers, especially the US, Europe, and Israel, shift course and allow space for regional-led solutions. Now, the bottom line of this article is that it is calling for paradigm shift from threats to possibilities. One, Iran must pivot from resistance-only posture to proactive regional diplomacy. Two, neighbors should recognize shared vulnerability and seize the chance for integration. And three, the US and Europe must stop undermining diplomacy and enable Iran's engagement. My friend Ehsan, what do you think about this article? How did you perceive it? How do you think about the premise and the arguments of Javad Zarif, especially when it comes to the shift that he is calling for from turning the posture of Iran from a threat paradigm into possibilities paradigm?
Some people even might call it a soft coup d'etat. So first, let me draw an analogy. What Mr. Zarif says is tantamount to saying that I have decided to sign a contract with a wolf that neither I nor the wolf are going to eat one another, which is, in my opinion, pretty preposterous. No, a wolf will attack you. The precedents show that United States is not going to remain committed to its obligations within any framework or within any deal. So this is a very preposterous suggestion. But when I say that this is close on the border of soft coup d'etat, it's actually a very hefty claim to make, right? It's not something that you can throw around easily. So in order for me to actually back that up, I have to prove three things. One, that this is not an isolated incident. Yes, Mr. Javad Zarif was former foreign minister of Iran. He was the former vice president of Iran, so he has held many high-ranking positions inside the Islamic Republic throughout his career. But if it's just him, then people can just dismiss it, right? So let's first prove that this is not an isolated incident. Second thing, we have to talk about the precedents that we have in terms of the people who are calling for these things. And that will make more sense, when I'm starting to explain these things, that these people might have actually a history of attempting to carry out a colored revolution inside Iran. The third thing that is important to discuss is the content of the statements that have been published. And since the reason that I have to do the first thing and the second thing is due to the fact that the politicians have a tendency to use euphemism. For example, if you listen to Obama, Nobel Peace winning president of the United States, he refers to torture as advanced interrogation technique. If you didn't know any better, you would think that he's referring to some sort of psychological breakthrough that enables the American interrogators to perform much better. But no, he's referring to torture. So they use this kind of euphemism, and I think that it is my responsibility to prove that based on the history of these people and the intensity of the articles, the frequency at which these articles and these suggestions are being put out there, that what I say is actually plausible. So first, this is not an isolated incident. After the end of the war, I had an interview which I referred to an article, an open letter, to be more precise, written by 163 Iranian economists who were talking about the change in the policy paradigm of Iran and the way that Iran chooses its strategy against its adversaries. That was, I think, the first interview after the war that I gave to Rachel Belevin's show. The second incident that happened was this letter written by the head of the Iran's Reform Front to the IAEA in order to help them to restart their inspections within Iran. Third thing that happened was this statement, this letter published by the people who carried out the colored revolution of 2009 inside Iran, which they talked about the necessity of forming something called Majlis Muassasan, the founding council, the council of founders, something like that. Which again, like the content of all these articles are very similar to one another, and they use the same kind of rhetoric. Israel Katz threatened the life of the Iranian leader. The gang of online trolls of Hassan Rouhani started to promoting him as the next suitable leader for Iran. It's a free country. It's a democratic country. People can talk about the Iranian leader's successor, but when your enemy, whom just attacked you very recently, makes a threat against the life of your politician, I think it is very inappropriate to do so. But stay with me because it all will make sense in a moment. They next we had the article from Zarif, Mr. Zarif, which you just mentioned, and the former Iranian president, Mr. Rouhani, publishing a video talking about the change in paradigm of governance. And finally, we have had the statement by Iran's Reform Front that has basically said the same thing. So why am I concerned? Why do I think that this thing, which is not an isolated incident, it's a running campaign, it's something that people should be wary of and conscious of the actions that are being taken by a particular party within Iranian political structure. This is serious enough to take as a potential threat. But why am I feel threatened about this? Well, if you know about the 2009 Green Movement inside Iran, something that was called Green Movement, which actually came after the Iranian presidential candidate, Mousavi, refusing to acknowledge the result of the Iranian election, he started this colored revolution inside Iran. So this is not the topic of our conversation. I'm just trying to address this very momentarily. We can have debates about this, but just to mention something that might be interesting to your audience, there is this document called U.S. Policy Towards Iran: Next Steps. This is the transcript of a hearing before the Committee on International Relations, House of Representatives. The serial number of the document is 109-3 for those who want to go and read this. This document was published on February 16th of 2005. What does it say? Mr. Palmer says, we believe that Iran should be the highest single priority of this administration and of this Congress going ahead over the next 4 years. Please pay attention, next 4 years. Most importantly, the committee believes we must get behind the Democrats and the dissidents in Iran. We believe, we really see that the solution that there needs to be and he goes sort of on a tangent, we have had an orange revolution, perhaps a green revolution now in Iran. So the logical question is, how come that this person on United States Committee hearing for International Affairs says, not only predicts that Iran in 4 years going to have a colored revolution, but also accurately predicts the color of that revolution. So I think, considering the rap sheet of United States and CIA in toppling the government, this is more than enough for people to be cautious of what happened. Again, the point of this was not to talk about 2009, but this is the former ambassador of United States to Hungary. When he mentions the colored revolution in Ukraine, he said orange revolution, right? When he mentions that, it sort of makes everyone uneasy. Every analyst feels uneasy about this. So CIA was involved in that colored revolution. And there is a New York Times article that people can go and read. It's about how CIA abandoned its assets within Iran of the fact that Iran dealt damage to their spy network. So this is the history of these people. This is who these people are. They were willing to go to this extent. There's also another article, I think it was written on, I might be wrong, but on Forbes. It's called Schumer and the Iranian Secrets or something like that. And it refers to a letter written by the so-called the heads of revolution in 2009, the people who tried to carry out the coup d'etat, in response to two questions that Schumer asked them, right? And they basically say, look, you have to put more pressure to Iran, their own country, right? So these are the people who work with the, other foreign entities in order to exert pressure on Iranian political establishment, right? Let's not forget, some of these things are considered normal for these people. For example, Zarif sat in front of al-Baradei while he was holding an office inside Iran and said, there are many candidates who benefit from us losing the negotiation. This is very normal behavior for these people. But what are the contents of these statements? Well, they talk about freeing political prisoners, which I think that many people love, right? Freeing political prisoners. But who do they mean? They mean the people who carried out the coup d'etat, the colored revolution of 2009. And what do they suggest? They suggest that we should completely dismantle the Iranian establishment and form a new republic. That's why they call it Majlis Muassasan, the Council of Founders. So these are very radical measures that they want to take. Another thing that they promote within their statement is to Enhilal Nahadhay Muwazi, which basically refers to the IRGC. Iranian armed forces has two militaries. it has IRGC, and it has the Iranian classical military. The bulk of offensive capabilities of Iran, which finally made Israel to accept the cessation of hostility, was due to the power of the Iranian IRGC aerospace force, namely the Iranian missile power. The bulk of these capacity, this power, comes from Iranian IRGC. So you have heard about Hezbollah's disarmament in Lebanon. You have heard about the calls of disarming PMF inside Iraq, but you haven't heard about the sort of weaselly way by which they try to dismantle the IRGC aerospace force and IRGC in general. They also refer to complete suspension of enrichment, changing the constitution, and things of that nature. So considering everything that I said, sorry for taking so long to explain, to respond to this question, but it's actually a very I tried to shrink it down in order to fit inside this framework of this pattern of interview. But it's actually something very important that, again, started when I warned people that there is more to this 163, the letter that was written by 163 Iranian economists. There was more to that. I said it back then. And since then, despite people being dismissive of my warnings, things have only escalated. And I think that these people are calling for more desperate measures. And there is something that is relevant to people who follow the events of Iran from the prism of, taking more, being more concerned about the regional developments, because a part of it says ترک خصومت داخلی و خارجی, stopping the hostility inside and outside of Iran. What do they mean by that? Well, they mean abandoning the Iranian allies. So this is basically the repetition of something called the Grand Bargain, which the Iranian reformist government of President Khatami basically suggested to the United States president that they're going to give away all the elements of power of Iran, and what they want in return is to be accepted within the sort of order that is established by United States.
My friend, there is something that I always receive, a comment from people who are critical of Iran nowadays, and they say that this attempt in Iran for paradigm shift by the reformists cannot possibly be without at least a tacit consent by the supreme leader. So they say that they are playing a good cop and a bad cop among each other in Iran, especially that it seems to them that this Iranian strategy in the region in the past 40 years, which was based on confrontation with the United States and diminishing the American and Israeli dominance over the region, has not succeeded yet, or the allies of Iran have received blows, especially in Palestine, Lebanon, and in Syria. And therefore, they say, why not trying a different approach and diplomatic approach with the United States, at least temporarily, in order for Iran to recalibrate its card and draw a new strategy for the future confrontation, instead of going into an endless cycle of confrontation and basically acts of hostilities, whether with the United States or with Israel, under unfavorable circumstances. So why not now have a phase of peace or detente between Iran and the other sides and try diplomacy, and then in the future you could draw a better strategy?
Okay, so there are quite a few things to unpack there. First, the reformists have this tendency of playing this very dirty game. If you say that the Iranian leader has accepted to your demands, that means that he's not a dictator. So all the arguments that you have about him being a dictator are completely nullified, because he goes along with your demands, right? But
yes,
at the same time, they want to say that no, the Iranian leader is in favor of this approach, but at the same time, when they fail, following the for example, the fiasco that was JCPOA, they want to also blame the Iranian leader, saying that, oh, the fractions that were working under the Iranian leader sabotaged our deal. For example, this is an actual argument by the former Iranian president, whose political life is determined and defined by JCPOA. He said that they wrote mottos on Iranian missiles. They carried out acts of adventurism in Syria and things of that nature. So if he is on board, then why is he sabotaging it? And if he is sabotaging it, causing the failure of the deals, then why do you say that he's on board? Like, this doesn't make any sense. But it doesn't have to make any sense, because on a philosophical level, they believe in sort of predestination and things of that nature, that these things are out of our control. So, it's a very, in Arabic you call it jabr, right? Yeah. The thing that dictates everything, and it is out of our control. It's coming from that prism. So it's not actually okay. The problem that people have is that they don't understand the Iranian political spectrum. Look, from the reformist camp to the other end of the spectrum, to the end of the principalist camp. Let's look at the individuals who are working in the political establishment of Iran. In the far reformist end, you have people like Mousavi Karoubi, who carried out the Colored Revolution, who were extensively working with United States. Fun fact, the supporters of these people during these revolutions, the so-called revolution, were chanting death to Russia, death to China. So they are very much in favor of United States and anti-Russia and China. We're not promoting that message, we're just talking about it. But from that end, they were in favor of negotiation with United States. A little bit to the principalist side, I'm not just going to repeat this, I'm just going to mention the name of the politicians one after another and refrain from saying a little bit to the side of the principalist. I'm going to stop saying that. The next was, you can think of Khatami. Again, the person who was going with the proposal of grand bargain, giving out everything. A little bit to the right, the next person is for example, you can say Hashemi Rafsanjani or people like him, former president of Iran. He was also in favor of JCPOA. Hassan Rouhani, he was the one who actually, who under his administration, JCPOA was signed. Larijani, in favor of the deal. Shamkhani, in favor of the deal. Ghalibaf, in favor of the deal. Ali Akbar Velayati, which is considered a principalist. Both Ghalibaf and Ali Akbar Velayati are considered to be principalists. They also support the negotiations. And in fact, the most serious attacks on this Iranian candidate, who was more critical of the negotiations in the presidential election that led to the first term of President Rouhani, these two individuals were attacking this person more than Rouhani attacking him. So they were more in favor of the negotiation. Then you talk about other individuals, and finally you go to the end of the spectrum. Jalili, who is made to be this monster. Fun fact, Jalili was negotiating with the United States in Almaty. Jalili was negotiating with the United States in Muscat, Oman. So nothing, I can tell you with absolute certainty, no one in the Iranian political establishment is against logical negotiation. No, they're not. President of Iran, former president of Iran, Raisi, what was he doing? He was negotiating with the United States. So this is the duopoly and the kind of dirty tricks that people use in order to strawman you. They change your words to something that it is not, and then attack that absurd, extreme argument that you never made in order to prove themselves right.
Yes.
So no Iranian politician is against negotiation, but the things that we are hearing are crazy, extreme measures that have failed. Iran has negotiated with the European countries in 2003, signing the Paris Agreement. In 2004, sorry, I said the Paris Agreement. No, Tehran Declaration. 2004 was the Paris Agreement. During these negotiations, Iran was supposed to suspend its enrichment for only 6 months.
Yes.
But, 6 months turned into 2 years because the Europeans were constantly wasting Iran's time, which is a tactic that they also used in the aftermath of United States withdrawal from JCPOA. This is the same tactic that the European countries, use. And as the saying goes, shame on you for fooling me the first time, but shame on me if I get tricked the second time. So 2003, 2004. During 2009, I think there was a swap deal between Iran and United States with the mediation of Brazil and between Iran and Argentina, and the mediators were Brazil and Turkey. The foreign ministers of each of these countries received a letter from the US President Barack Obama that this was a US-backed proposal.
Yes.
And when Iran agreed to that, and it basically sort of exported its excess uranium-enriched material, United States went behind Iran back and passed the resolution 1929, which is one of the most important resolutions passed against Iran. Then you had the 2003 negotiation of Iran, JPOA. Yes. 2015, the JCPOA. In JPOA, if you read the March 3rd, I think the March 2014 report of the IAEA, it says that Iran is already voluntarily taking measures that make up the bulk of its commitment within JCPOA. So we voluntarily started implementing JCPOA before the other parties even sign it, let alone start implementing it. In 2018, the reformists say, oh, no, we're not going to follow JCPOA. We're going to continue JCPOA with the Europeans. And they mentioned something called INSTEX, which was so humiliating because it was only food in return for money, food and medicine in return of money. 2021, the negotiation between President Raisi and the Europeans and United States, which Joseph Borrell referred to as Iranians have, reasonable demands, and United States will probably most likely accept them. That's what Joseph Borrell said. Then you had the current negotiation, which resulted in the attack of Israel 2 days before Iran and United States having a meeting. Yeah. So this is something that we already have done. The reformists can't just stay aside and say, "Oh no, we never had a saying in the strategies of Iran." No, these are your doings. You have constantly negotiated with both United States and the European parties, and you have constantly failed. Your grand bargain has failed. Your 2003, 2004, 2009 was with Mr. Ahmadinejad. 2013, 2015, and the current negotiation. You have constantly failed. You can't just, pretend that it is none of your doing. So exactly what they are referring to, the current failure, actually comes from their own strategies. They went on and signed the Astana Agreement. When Mohammad Javad Zarif signed the Astana Agreement, which gave a safe haven to the terrorists in Idlib, Syria, he had to take away the title of Mr. Hossein Amir Abdullahian, who later on became the Iranian foreign minister, remove his department because he was the head of the African and Arab department inside the Iranian foreign ministry.
Yes.
He had to dismantle his department in order to go and do this thing. Why did he do it? I have mentioned this in another episode of your show, that he did it because Macron called President Rouhani and said,
Yes.
if you also, apart from your nuclear capabilities, nuclear program, also make concessions on your regional influence, that will help United States rejoin the deal. And what happened? Because of the fact that the air defense system in Syria was completely destroyed. Yes, Syria did not have the capability to stop the F-35s of Israel, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about US fuel tankers flying over the Syrian territories. They could shoot down the US oil fuel tankers. They could do that. So this attack comes as a direct result of your actions. I don't understand how people can fool themselves. What we see with regards to Hezbollah is a direct result of the pressure that the reformists exerted on the Iranian political structure in order to not carry out Operation True Promise 2. So I do not accept that analysis. I don't accept that approach of putting yourself aside, pretending as if none of this is your fault. That's shifting the blame.
Ehsan, this is a very thorough explanation. I really appreciate it because I wouldn't been able to say it better to explain these points, and I'm not against a diplomatic approach at all. In the contrary, I believe that should be the first approach before confrontation. But this always needs you need two for tango, right? And you need good intentions. Even if you're dancing a tango with another side, if they're going to use their knees or they're going to make you fall while you're dancing, it's really difficult to trust the United States nowadays, especially that we have a track record of noticing with our objective eyes a pattern, and that is they want to shake your hand, and while they want to shake your hand, they try to break your hand while they're talking to you. And they have done this over and over again with many, many countries, unfortunately. Nowadays, we have several reports, my friend, about a possibility of a second phase of Israeli attacks against Iran, or some people say this is an imminent threat of war, regional war. You publish on your X account that 4 refueling tankers left U.S. airbase in Qatar. This was on the 19th of August. And on the 18th of August, 3 tankers left the region. So it seems that the Americans are also withdrawing from one of their bases in Iraq, Ain al-Assad, if I'm not mistaken, air base. So there is some military movement in the region. There is some refueling, there is some reinforcement, there is some redeployment of troops in the region. In your point of view, do you believe that Israel is preparing for a second phase of war against Iran? And if that happens, what would be the response, or what type of the nature of the response from Iran? Last time, first few days, they were really hard for Iran. At the first few days, I saw a multi-layer attack against Iran, but after they contained the attack, they came back with a huge offensive, which I believe these missile attacks against Tel Aviv was the reason why the Americans struck cessation of hostilities, or forced the cessation of hostilities on Israel, because the damages were very big. So is war imminent in your opinion, and how would be the response of the IRGC this time?
Look, the first thing that I can say with absolute certainty is that we can no longer look at the political gestures that are being made. This is absolutely something that can't be done anymore. For 6 months, the Israelis were planning to attack Iran. That started in November 2024, when they formed this thing called Team X. And for 3 months, they were in direct contact with United States administration, Benjamin Netanyahu with Donald Trump, Ron Dermer with J.D. Vance and the Secretary of State of the United States, Marco Rubio, and Israel Katz were preparing these documents. But United States, until the very last moment, maintained operation security, and like 1 or 2 days before the start of Israeli aggression against Iran, he was actually talking about how he hasn't abandoned negotiation. So considering how perfidy and deceit is a tactic used by United States President Donald Trump too frequently, this is not something that we can do. He sort of lured Iranian General Qasem Soleimani to Iraq through its connections with Saudi Arabia, and then assassinated him. That's something that he did. He attacked Iran while he was negotiating with Iran. He said that he's not going. He hasn't give up on negotiation, and he himself. We're not talking. The first instance that I referred to was about the 13th of June attack by Israel.
Yes.
But the second instance that I'm now referring to, it was during the war that he said that Iranian foreign minister was negotiating with the European counterparts, and through that backdoor channel and indirect negotiation, United States president said that, we're going to negotiate more, but then he carried out the Operation Midnight Hammer. So considering how often he used this tactic, he uses it even against his allies. Yes. I was listening to a member of the Canadian Parliament, and he said that United States president told us that we are going to reach a negotiation, but now he has imposed tariff. He has, deceived us. He even uses this against Canada, let alone Iran. So when you're talking about an adversary like this, you cannot be optimistic. The second thing that we have to talk about and address here is the fact that Israel has opened the Pandora box. Look, one of the main problems for Iran is the fact that, let me be honest, this doesn't make me happy, but in Iran, I can say that some politicians were too arrogant about Israel. And I always say this, the problem about Iran-Israel war is the fact that for Israel, Iran is a priority. Take a listen to the interview by Israeli Prime Minister and Mark Levin, in which Mark Levin asks, what are the top 3 threats of Israel? And Netanyahu says Iran. Then he says, you're looking for the top 3, Iran. But the same thing is not true with regards to Iran. The spokesperson for Supreme National Security of Iran, Mr. Ali Larijani, after the end of the war said, آخه تو که خیلی کوچولویی ارزش این حرفا رو نداری, which means you're too small to threaten us. And that kind of negligence towards the Israeli threat has cost Iran many things. But on the other side, this is not the mentality of the Israelis. The Israelis now think that whether this was the right policy or the wrong policy, they are now committed to this path, because it's tantamount to having 2 routes in front of you. One is longer than the other, but now you have moved beyond a certain point of the longer route, then that if you decide to backtrack and go from the shorter route, you're making another mistake.
Yes.
Right? That's basically the consensus within the Israeli political structure. So they're not going to leave Iran alone. They will attack Iran. And this attack will, I think that, for example, they need to carry out a bombing campaign that would exceed a month period, 40 days, 45 days. But at the same time, they need to end it in a manner that they would give 2 months to the US political establishment and the ruling class, so that President Trump can prepare for the April midterm elections in the United States. So they have to carry this operation out in that way. And I believe that if they would attack, they will most likely attack in the next 2 or 3 months.
Yes.
It might be. I'm not a fortune teller. I don't have like.
But that's logical before the midterm elections.
Yeah, they have to do it, by then. And these will be the parameters of Israeli attack on Iran. On the Iranian side, we have to understand, and I'm sort of tired of explaining this to the people. Iranian air defense systems are not weak. It's the problem with the way that people understand the situation and the lack of expertise. Whenever I hear people saying the Iron Dome could not intercept Iranian missiles, it really agitates me, because the job of the Iron Dome is not to intercept missiles.
Yes.
The job of Iron Dome is to intercept rockets. And drones and cruise missiles, not the ballistic missiles. The same way that I talk about how Iron Dome is not as bad of a system as people make it out to be, because they're diluting things and they're basically explaining things in the wrong manner. The same way I do feel that it is very dishonest that people would say that, oh, Iran's Bavar 373 is not a good system because it failed in intercepting the drones that were flown by Mossad operators inside Iran. No, that system's job is not to intercept drones. It's a high altitude interceptor for the fighter jets of Israel. And what Israel did very brilliantly, but also tragically, I'll explain why it's also tragic as well, was that they utilized these low flying vehicles, low altitude flying vehicles that move in such spaces that the radar of these systems do not look at, right? Yes. These radars are targeted in certain directions, and they could, inflict damage on the Iranian air defense system. Some of them were also attacked by anti-tank missiles. What if I go to the most advanced air defense system in the world and use an RPG in order to take that out?
Yeah.
Would that mean that air defense system is not good? No, not at all. We saw how the Ukrainians performed a similar attack on Russia in order to take out their strategic bombers.
Yes.
Would anyone be I don't know how to say it politely, but stupid enough to say that Russia doesn't have good air defense systems? Of course not. This is the inherent and innate nature of these kind of air defense systems. So if Iranian air defense, the Iranians succeed in preventing replication of that sort of attack, they will perform much better than the last time. And I will tell you why this was unfortunately tragic, because Hezbollah was doing it to them.
Yeah.
Hezbollah used Almas anti-tank guided missiles, which are Iranian versions, the reverse engineered Iranian version of a Spike missile, which is an Israeli missile. So we hit them with their own missile, and they said, "Oh, that's what you're gonna do? We're gonna do it to you as well. This is, after all, this is our missile that you have copied." So the tragic part of it is that no one took a step back and say, "Guys, what if they use our innovation, the trick that we used? What if they replicated on us?"
Yes.
And that's why I think that it's always important to be self-critical and think, what would the enemy do? What if they replicate our methods? And these are things that unfortunately the Israelis have done. But I think that for them to neutralize the threat of the Iranian air defense systems, in order to replicate that, they will not resort into the same tactic, namely using these micro-aerial vehicles and these low-flying vehicles, low-altitude flying vehicles in order to carry out the, attacks on these air defense systems. We have to think outside of the box. How can you use another tactic? Well, you can do it by neutralizing it from on the ground.
Yeah.
People going and committing act of sabotage. How can they bypass the Iranian security measures in order to do so? Well, by carrying out attacks and making the borders of Iran unsafe, which, considering the amount of separatist movements that exist all around Iran, the Kurdish separatists, the Azeri separatists, and the Baluch separatists, that's not something very hard to do. Very recently, there was a terrorist attack in southeastern parts of Iran. This attack was carried out within the 300 kilometers of the Iranian borders. What does this say to you? To me, it is indicative of the fact that these groups are no longer fleeing to Pakistan. They're getting ready and they're testing how far they can carry out attacks. So what Iran has to do is to make sure that none of these sort of militias are going, not militias, terrorist organizations, are going to put a strain on the Iranian security that would make them sort of forget about the importance of protecting the air defense system from on the ground.
Wow, this was. I have to watch back this, listen to this answer again tonight when we broadcast this one, because I have to take a little bit notes, and I will use also the script of this because it's important to go through all the details that you mentioned. And one of the reasons I believe that they are still after Iran, despite some of the voices inside Iran that we want to negotiate and find a settlement or a grand bargain in the region, is the Zangezur corridor. And today I have read an article which they are quoting an Iranian MP. The Zangezur corridor will never be implemented, declared a member of the Iranian parliament representing the cities of Shahr-e-Kord, Ben and Saman and Farokh Shah. The IRGC Telegram channel reports. He says America fully understands that the Zangezur corridor located near the Islamic Republic of Iran will never be implemented, and we will never allow it. Now, I'm going to be very, very honest with you, my friend. There are many people in Iran, in the parliament, they have big mouths and they say lots of big things, but then you don't see much of these threats being materialized. And the president of Iran, he said, don't worry, it's not that bad what is happening on the northern borders, although this is going to be an American route built by the US and protected by American and Israeli contractors right on the border with Iran and changing the trade routes in the region. I think this is it's going to have negative economic and financial impact on Iran itself. And since Iran is living under sanctions, this is going to be a double choking of the Iranian economy. So I truly do not understand the statement of Pezeshkian when he said, don't worry, guys, it's not that bad about the Zangezur. But knowing all these circumstances, what options does Iran have to counter this Zangezur corridor in the region when the Armenian government, by the color revolutionist, the executive director, basically, of the globalists in Armenia, has put his signature on this deal, and the Azeris are on board, the Turks are on board, and the Iranians seems like they were left out of this deal.
Look, first let me tell you a story. The Iranian Minister of Urban Development and Roads and things of that nature, he made a trip to Azerbaijan. And seemingly he got lost and went into a cafe or a restaurant of some sort. Funny thing is that during that, when he entered that establishment, the Israelis and the Azeris were negotiating with one another at the table. And she didn't understand anything. She didn't figure it out, which is the perfect analogy And after a while, she left, by the way, which is the perfect analogy, like the Israelis and the Azeris and the Turks collaborating with one another. And then you have this clueless Iranian minister going and, basically not understanding what's happening. So the perfect analogy for that. Unfortunately, I cannot say that the current politicians in Iran are as wise as they can be, unfortunately. And they don't understand the importance of the Zangezur corridor, how if this is established, considering the history that Iran gave a piece of land to Turkey in order to become neighbor to Nakhchivan, which is the exclave of Azerbaijan. And now they are putting another, by the way, when I say Iran, I mean Iran of the Pahlavi regime.
Mm-hmm.
The first king of Pahlavi gave them that piece of land. And now they have new demands. And they also refer to many outlets in TV channels inside Azerbaijan, referring to provinces of Iran as South Azerbaijan. This is a very important and serious threat. And if these two states form something akin to a state union between Russia and Belarus, then that means that Iran is going to be completely encroached by a country that has extensive relationship with Azerbaijan,
Yes.
and another country that is member of a NATO. So this is very important. The Iranian president, unfortunately, doesn't know what he's talking about. And this doesn't please me to say this, but some people think that hiding reality helps us in any way. No, acknowledging the reality will show to the world that at least there are some people inside Iran who understand what's happening. And but in terms of what you said, these ministers talking, these members of parliaments saying things that will never materialize. That's why you need people who are experts on Iranian affairs to tell you which is important and which is not, because like many of them just make noises, unfortunately. The analogy that I used for the Zangezur corridor is that when these people talk about these things, Ali Akbar Velayati also made similar comments that with or without Russia, we're going to stop this, stop the Zangezur corridor. A while ago, he said that we didn't think that Turkey would betray us in Syria. Well, that didn't work out well for you, Mr. Velayati, did it? These people are naive, and they have brought the war to the borders of Iran. And that's akin to saying that, for example, God forbid, someone having a cancer, right? And it is just in the first stage, first stage cancer. And then they refrain from starting the treatment until it becomes fifth stage cancer.
Yes.
The cancer cells metastasize to other organs and other cells, and then say, oh, now I'm going to start the treatment.
Yes.
Well, it's now very much harder than before, right? Whereas before we could just try to create more and more incentives for Armenia to find some sort of leeway in order to persuade them. Now, it's not even the Zangezur corridor. It's called the Trump route.
Yes.
Why do they call it Trump route? Because now it's not about Azerbaijan occupying Armenia. It's about Armenia leasing a piece of its land to United States. You're going to fight United States? You're telling me that you're going to fight United States. If you wanted to do that, how about you? You could do it when they carried out attack on the Iranian nuclear facilities with their B-2s. How about that? Well, it's like a lot of these things are noise. There is a way to do this. There is a way to do this. And it's not pretty at all. But there is still a way to do it. Unfortunately, it's I'm not gonna explain what it is. I'm sorry.
We already got the message without you saying it.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not pretty. But desperate times call for desperate measures. There are other ways that you can do. For example, Russia is attacking the infrastructure of Sokar oil company of Azerbaijan in Ukraine. There are things that you can do, but when I'm talking about that, unfortunately, people's mind just go to one thing. No, I'm talking about multiple different things that can be used in conjunction, but none of them are pretty.
Yeah.
And at the same time that Iran is taking these measures, it should negotiate with these parties and say, what I heard surprisingly said very well by the spokesperson of the Supreme National Security Council in Lebanon to the Lebanese Prime Minister, that when he said, I'm sorry that we had to be straightforward with you, but I'm sorry, we had to make it clear. So in times of playing these idiotic games have gone by, that opportunity is long gone. You had time in order to take different measures, in order to do different things. And I'm not, again, rooting out the possibility of integrating those approaches with the current approach that I'm supporting. But they can no longer be considered as the main viable route in order to prevent United States presence on the border of Iran, and possibly even violation of the Armenian sovereignty, because in 100 years they're going to claim that this is their land.
Of course,
this is something that has actually happened to Iran with regards to its 3 islands.
Yes,
the 3 islands of Iran belongs to Iran. It was occupied by United Kingdom, and they were meant to be returned to Iran. But then United Arab Emirates made a sort of back deal with Britain, and unfortunately they have created a can of worm that, despite the might of Iran, the United Arab Emirates is having territorial claim over the Iranian territories. This can happen to the Armenia much easier. And actually the American Enterprise Institute has published a paper that United States should back the efforts of UAE in seizing the control of these 3 islands, which has a greater ramification, meaning that Iran cannot use them in order to enforce a blockade and close the Strait of Hormuz. So this is a trickle-down effect. This is something that starts as a little snowball on the top of the mountain, but as it rolls down, it becomes extremely dangerous. Same thing can happen to Armenia. They already say that the Blue Mosque that was constructed in the 18th century by Persian constructors is a sign that Yerevan belongs to Azerbaijan.
Yes,
they're this audacious and shameless that they have territorial claim over the capital of Armenia.
Yes.
So things will only get worse from here now on.
Unfortunately, that is the case. However, in Armenia, there is a prevailing narrative. The government has a strong grip over the press. The EU pays millions of euros into these NGOs, media outlets, journalists, activists, and voices like myself, I'm an ethnic Armenian, considered absurd, conspiracy theory, and but the problem is every time they turn out to be correct, these conspiracy theories, since 2018 when Pashinyan came to power. So I hope Armenians who are watching this now from an Iranian perspective would get the perspective, get the context, and also the warnings, because as I told you guys, this is a Trojan horse in the region, and this is going to cause troubles for Armenia. And Armenia is a small country sandwiched between 2 hostile countries, and now they are polarizing themselves or becoming a polarizing power even further, and now also for Iran. So this is going to be bad news for those who think that the customs service and the money that they're going to make from this Trump route is going to be fun for them. But this will definitely lead into diminishing Armenia's already broken sovereignty, and the Israelis and the Americans will establish a foothold there, and then from there they will expand. This is just the beginning. But until then, we will definitely have this discussion one more time with our dear friend. He was very generous with his time. I promised him that this show was between 40 to 50 minutes. Now we are over 1 hour of very insightful conversation and analysis from Ehsan's side. Thank you so much, my friend, really, for coming to the show.
Thank you for inviting me to your show. It was a pleasure, as always.
And guys, thank you so much for watching this, whether you watch this on YouTube, on Rumble, or Ganjin World. As you already know, the link of Ehsan's X account is in the description below. Please hit him and also follow and read what he is his analysis, his insights about Iran and about the region. Those are very valuable. And for those who watch this and like this content, the easy thing to do is to hit the like button, subscribe to this YouTube channel, and if you like to support the independent work I'm doing, there are different means in the description below, and I will see you tomorrow. Peace be upon you and upon your families, and peace be upon you, dear friend Ehsan.